All right. Hello, guys. Thanks for joining me on Facebook Live today with the Race Directors Hub Facebook group. This is part of the RunSignup social learning series, and I'm Johanna Good. I'm talking to you today from RunSignup headquarters in Morristown, New Jersey. And we're going to review RaceTrends, which is our annual statistical report that we put together to try to get a better understanding of what's happening in the endurance market. To give away a little bit of the headliner, this is the first year that we actually didn't see an aggregate growth within the industry. And so I'll go over kind of what those numbers mean, where we get them from. But more importantly, I want to talk about where we did see growth, strategies that we saw that did seem to work and that got traction so that people can try to implement those to make their events a little bit more competitive in a pretty tight market. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them on the Facebook the feed. I'll do my best to answer them throughout. And if you jump in, jump out, this is all recorded on there. You can come back and watch it whenever you want. And I guess we'll flip over to the information. So to kick off with some of the kind of boring nitty-gritty, just a little bit of an idea of where these numbers come from. All of this is pulled from RunSignup registration and results data, which means it's all dependent on what's on our system. That being said, we look at it in two different ways. So we do look at overall numbers of what we see going on within our system. However, when we get to certain reports, we do compare races that were only on our event in 2 consecutive years. So when we talk about things like growth, we're comparing races that were on our system both in 2017 and 2018. So that shouldn't take into account growth within the platform because we had more races. It's only comparing events to events. The numbers are coming from 2015 to 2018. So this is the third year we've put out the report, largely because we needed to make sure that we had enough volume in our system to really have valuable data. Now that we're at that point, we've had a couple of years in a row where we can really start to see trends and how things are changing. The year actually runs on this from December 1st to November 30th, and that's basically really just on a timing of when we like to get this report out, but it is a full year. Just for an idea of how much of the market this represents, we tend to estimate that it's about 17 to 25% of the US market share. There isn't a really strong way to know that because finisher and participant data is spread across a lot of different platforms. It's on various results platforms, various registration platforms. So we don't have an aggregate idea of exactly how many numbers there are. Running USA reports 18.3 million. They tend to go on finishers. Eventbrite estimates about 60 million worldwide, and we tend to think about half is the US. So that's where we come up with the estimated 17 to 25%. So what that means is this is specifically looking at 43,811 race events and a little over 6 million participants. When we talk about race events here, if you're a RunSignup customer, then you know we tend to refer to events as a 10K or a 5K, and a race is the overall overarching entity. For the purposes of this, each 10K, each 5K, each race distance is counted separately because that's the only way we can compare 5Ks to 5Ks and so on. So this is where I said this is the first year that we have not seen overall growth. To reiterate, this is only comparing races that were on the platform both in 2017 and 2018. So this doesn't take into account any new races that we had that started in 2018. And we're at essentially a flat market, 0.1% decrease in participation. You can definitely tell longer distances are hit a little bit harder. Half marathons and marathons show the real decrease, whereas the 5Ks and 10Ks actually had a slight increase. Kind of along with that, the other part of the bad news in the market, one thing that we tracked new this year, and it's not on all races, it was only looking at races over 500 participants. We estimated that about 6% of races that were held in 2017 did not take place in 2018, meaning they were canceled, decided not to return for whatever reason. That tends to hit a lot heavier on the larger races. On the smaller races, because only 3% over 1,000 that we saw did not recur. And we cannot actually track, or we did not track, races smaller than 500, largely because the tracking of this is actually fairly manual, and it would be an Herculean task to try to track all of them. But based on the fact that we saw more pressure, the smaller event race, we would tend to assume that smaller events are also feeling a lot of pressure, those under 500. However, the optimistic part, despite a flat or growing market, there are areas of growth, and we have seen races that really succeeded this year. And so what we want to do is take a look at some of what those events did. Starting off, one thing that we always get questions about is how many participants come back. I think most of the time when I talk to people about these numbers, they are surprised at how low they are. Participants returning year after year is really hard. So one caveat to this is we can only track repeat participants based on whether or not they match in our system. There is a small percentage who may come back a second year with a different email address and a different formatting of their name that doesn't show up in this, but for the most part, these are pretty close. Obviously, you can note shorter distances tend to do a little bit better. Longer distances have a harder time holding on to people. I think it's interesting to see a 5K tends to be a little bit tougher than a 10K, likely because there are so many 5Ks, whereas 10Ks have a little bit more of a niche. Once you get into the longer distances, you're really talking about a long training cycle and a large commitment, and often a lot of travel. Because of that, those numbers, it's much, much harder to get repeat participants for longer distances. So a couple of things you can do with that. For longer distances, you really want to think about where else you can look. So expand your reach, go outside of your geographic region, see if you can find other areas that you haven't looked at before. Versus on shorter races, you really want to build a sense of tradition. You want to come up with things that were repeated every year. If you can become a part of people's lives in a way that is unique, for example, turkey trots are great at that. It's something that everyone does every year. Then that can help you to have people coming back. Couple of other ideas of things that you can do to work within this. If you have a race distance, having a variety of options of distances can really help you to bring people back year after year. For example, this works particularly well if you have a long event. So you have a marathon and you have people who love your event, but they can't train for a marathon every year. It's overwhelming to do so. Therefore, if you also include a half marathon and a 5K, you're providing options for the people who love your event and want to do it every year, but just can't train as intensely every year to also still be able to come back. One other thing we see a lot of success with is cross-promoting events. This works especially well if you have multiple events where people know that you put on a good event, they like your events, they want to continue to come back to them, but they want to do something different. And that's where you see the high turnover rates, people wanting new experience. So cross-promote your events. If you have one race, promote your other races to those same people and vice versa. They already trust you, they already like you. That's allowing them to do something that they trust while coming in with a new experience. If you don't have other races, one thing you can also do is to cooperate with other races, play nice. Find some races that are on a different weekend or that don't directly compete with you and help promote each other's events. You can put together interesting bundles of races so people can do both of them. You can just simply talk about each other's races. I know it sounds counterintuitive in a competitive market to work with another race, but if you're in a small geographic area, you're targeting the same people, it can be helpful that maybe you get them one year, someone else gets them the other year, and you're able to pass them back and forth a little. I don't think this will surprise anyone. Prices are increasing. We saw price increases pretty much across the board. Percentage-wise, the increase amount is more with the longer distances. The caveat on this, ultras are the only event that we saw decrease in price, and I think that's probably the least accurate of the numbers in that we have a smaller market share there to begin with, and it encompasses a wider variety of events. So an ultra could be 50K or it could be a 200 miler, and the price points on those are so different that they're going to swing a little bit more wildly year to year. You see a little bit more variation across the board there. Aside from that, all prices going up. So when we look at price increases, I think most events now are familiar with price increases. It looks like on shorter distances, you tend to see about one price increase in a race cycle, or it's more like two as you get into longer distances. Again, as expected, prices go up by more for the longer distances because you have more price to work with. The registration cycle is often shorter for shorter events, so a lot of times there isn't really time to do two price increases. Whereas for longer distances, if your race is open for 4 months, there's plenty of time for you to bump your prices a few times. I kind of think of pricing as a marketing tool. There's two things that you can really do with it. Obviously, you can't set your price to whatever you want. There are costs that need to be covered, but you can think about how you break down your price options. One way of looking at having a low entry price and a higher race week price is that you can broaden your participant base. So you're going to have some bargain seekers who really just need the cheapest race that they can get. They're looking out for making sure they can afford to be able to run. So you have a relatively low price for them coming in, and they know that they need to come in on that price. You get them then registered early. That's a win-win. However, you're going to have a lot of procrastinators, and you don't want to disallow them from participating by cutting off registration entirely. What you can do is put in a significant price increase for those people registering very late, because if they're registering very late, their priority was likely not wanting to decide, not the price. So they'll pay a little bit more for the opportunity to come in at the end of the cycle. If you want to use price increases as a marketing strategy, you have to use strong calls to action. Don't just have a price increase. You need to have a Facebook campaign, have an email marketing campaign, include your price increase in everything that you talk about and make it very clear in all of your communications so that people have an incentive to come in and register. I'll get to a little bit later one of the stats that says it's basically a quarter of our registrations come in within 3 days of a price increase or registration ending. So it really does matter that you actually highlight and enforce those price increases. Coupons. Coupons have a little bit of a mixed reputation in the industry. I think a lot of people use them to excess. A lot of other events are very scared of them and never want to discount their event. And I think we come down somewhere in the middle. Coupons, like price increases, are huge calls to action. It's really helpful to have a reason for people to sign up now. And coupons can be time-based, which means you're giving them a deadline. Deadlines work. What I find interesting in this year's report, and I actually think is fairly encouraging, is essentially the use of coupons has plateaued. We're basically 7.5% for the last 2 years, 7.5% of registrations coming from coupons. However, the ROI on that has gone up because the average discount has gone down. So in 2017, we saw almost $16 as the average coupon, whereas in 2018, it was down to $11. And I think what that says is that the dollar amount of the coupon is less important than the existence of it. So you don't have to give away a ton of money. You just have to make it a reason to register. Takeaways from that are kind of similar to price increases. Make sure that you're promoting coupons if you're going to use them. Don't throw them out for everything. Don't make a coupon for every person who could possibly register. You want to use them strategically. You want to think about in advance, where are the times you're going to give coupons, who are you going to give them to, and what kind of time schedule are you going to put them on, and then work aggressively around that so that during the time that that coupon is available, it's talked about, it's highlighted, and it really is, you're getting the max amount of registrations from it. And don't over discount. You don't, if you have a race that is $50, you don't need to be giving away a $20 coupon. Try a $5 coupon. Start with small things, because sometimes what the coupon is good for is prompting people to go register, not so much actually providing them a strong discount. Referrals is something you have definitely heard of if you have talked to anyone from RunSignup in the last 2 years. This is our favorite program because we see really, really strong returns on races that use it well. How referrals works is you set up a code so that each registrant has their own individual link. When they share that link, someone else can register through it. That original person gets credit for that referral. And you can set up any variety of programs then to reward people for referring their friends. This has kind of two benefits. One is that you're getting more registrants. The other is that we find very strongly that people love doing social running. They're going to have more fun if they're there with their friends anyways. So giving them a reason to bring their friends is really going to help their race day experience, as well as getting you more runners. So there's two ways that you can do referrals. You can set it up so that the referrer gets a refund, or you can set it up so that the referrer gets some specific swag item that you set aside. That could be a special t-shirt, that could be a tent on race day, or a VIP parking spot, any sort of thing that can work for swag. So you can do one or the other, or you can do both. Along with this, there is just a ton of different options for how you want to structure your referrals. We see, our average that we come away with is that they represent about 6% of registrations for races that have them turned on. But we also have races that can get as high as 10 to 18%. And a lot of that has to do with the structure of the referral program, and a lot of it has to do with how well they promote it. So a couple of key points if you're going to put in a referral program. We highly, highly recommend a high threshold, high reward referral structure. So rather than saying every person you refer gets you a $2 discount, you want to look at it and say every fifth person you refer gets you a $25 discount. And what that does is it sets a threshold that most people won't reach. But it's a high enough threshold to encourage the referrer to actually share the event. Most runners are going to see $25. That's an amount that is worth something to them, and therefore think, I will reach out and see if I can get to any of my friends. Many of them will end up referring 1 or 2 or 3 people, and you won't end up refunding them regardless, but you will still get the referred friends to come in. I think this ended up averaging that about 13 people were referred for every, 13 people were referred for every 1 refund given. So it's not a huge loss in terms of what you're actually paying out in refunds. If you want a really highly effective program, you can incorporate both refunds and swag. So say, 5 refunds or 5 referrals, you get a refund. At 10 refers, you get a hoodie. At 20 referrals, you get a parking spot. And what that does is it really only matters to a small percentage of people. However, those people are your biggest fans, your biggest promoters, and they feel super special. So you're going to end up giving away 3 hoodies, but that person might bring in 30 and 40 people, and that's worth it. And as with everything that we've said, when you pick your marketing strategies, you need to include them in every sort of communications that you have. Make sure that in all of your follow-up emails to your registrants, you're reminding them of the referral program. Automated emails. So there's a variety of different emails that people send on their own. One thing that we've done is include a couple of automated emails that you can enable that will go out without you doing anything. You can customize them to make them a little bit more personal to you, but they'll go out on whatever time schedule you set. So to the 2 that we looked at here are incomplete registration emails and price increase emails. Incomplete registration emails are, I'm sure you've gotten these before when you've gone to either register for something or buy something and not completed it. But about 14% of registrations come from races that activated some sort of automated emails. With these, price increases, again, are highly effective. A lot of races will send out an email on their own manually saying a price increase is coming up. We really recommend that you go in and make sure that that email is set up to go out automatically, because people often then forget to send them out on time. And that is really a well responded to email. Automated emails are effective. I also think the largest argument for them is that they're a low effort resource. They're something else to get done and checked off of your list early and in advance of the event. So this is looking at data from our Race Insights program. Race Insights is essentially an internal tracking system. We compare it to a Google Analytics specific to our race websites. It tracks essentially every click to a RunSignup race website. What that means is anyone who has a race on RunSignup is immediately automatically created a race website. That can be a standalone race website, or it can be in addition to an external race website that they have. So a couple of notes on this is it undercounts a couple of different areas. It's going to undercount emails a little bit because it can only count emails that are sent from the RunSignup email system. So if you send emails out from MailChimp or Constant Contact or some other system like that, it's not counting in the emails the same way. It also likely then undercounts Google and Facebook, because some people are advertising on Google or Facebook and sending their traffic directly to their external website, which means it's not counting towards the RunSignup site. However, there's a couple of interesting things that you can take away from this. One is that SEO is very important. If you don't know what that is, it's search engine optimization. And that is essentially ways in which your website is described to Google or another search engine so that people can find it when you Google it. If you don't know how you're doing on that, Google your event. Does your race website come up? You want to make sure that people who are actually looking for your event can find it very easily. The other interesting number on that was this RunSignup affiliates are at 3% of registrations. What affiliate is essentially a race calendar. It might be runningintheusa.com or halfmarathons.com. It might be a local timer or a running store that builds a calendar straight off of our races that are listed on our site. So if it's someone who is an affiliate of ours, they're automatically getting your race into their calendar, which is great. But what you can do now, that since you know that people really are using calendars to find races, is take a look around, see if there's other local clubs, running stores, timing companies, etc. in your area that have race calendars that are building on their own, and make sure that you're on their calendar. It's just a really good way to get in front of runners while they're looking for races. One quick question. I'm sorry, I think there's a slight lag between me and the Facebook comments, so this is touching back a little bit, but the question asking who the automated emails get sent to. So price increase emails, you can set that up in two ways. You can have two different emails that go out. One that goes out to current participants to let them know that the price is increasing and they should tell their friends to come sign up. You can set up a separate one that would go out to your list of previous participants or a custom list that you have in the system to let them know that the price is increasing and they should register. You can do that in two different ways. All right. So the timing of registrations, when do people register? This is one of my favorite actual visual graphs because it's so very clear as soon as you look at it, the difference between when people register for a 5K versus a marathon. I don't think any of that is rocket science or something you haven't thought of, but I do think it's really interesting to see it in full. The cycle for a long distance event is much, much longer and starts much earlier than it does for a short distance one. This I noted a little bit earlier, that 27% of registrations are within 3 days of a price increase or registration close. So a lot of the race week data that you see there is related to that, as well as some spikes in between. So our takeaways from that, never close registration. Technology is too advanced at this point. It's too easy to have people register on race day. I know it's a pain and we all hate it, but if you really want to maximize your participation, you have to make it flexible to have some sort of registration all the way up through race day. Another point that it kind of piggybanks off of an earlier one, your pricing should reward people who come in early because that's people you've already captured. At the same time, allow for late procrastinators. All right. Mobile adoption, we see about 60% of traffic from mobile. So this has been steadily increasing. It's been increasing as long as I've been in the industry and continues to go up. People are more and more comfortable with their phones. One thing that has really changed is that it used to be largely traffic from mobile, whereas transactions were done on desktop. We're actually seeing a pretty good increase in transactions taking place on mobile as well. So that's gone up 5% just since last year. We're at 38% of transactions are taking place on mobile. Really, that just demonstrates how much the industry has changed, how comfortable people are with phones. A lot of the fear of using phones to make transactions has kind of shifted. So what you want to do is make sure that your registration is simple, that it's mobile friendly, it's easy to see on mobile. You want to get people in and out fast because they're less patient on their phones. And whatever process you have, test it out on mobile, test your emails on mobile, test everything that you put out on mobile, because that's how a lot of people are going to see it. Donations, this is a big part of a lot of races. Most races that we see have a donation component, and most of them, it's a big deal to try to raise more. So I really like looking at these two graphs because they show a pretty good comparison. The first one here shows the number of donations at a certain dollar amount. So almost half of all donations made are less than $10 per donation. You see very, very small slivers up here for the larger donation dollars. However, if you jump over here and look at the total value of those donations, it looks very different. So while half of the donations may be coming in at under $10, it's only 7.8% of your total donations. Whereas $50 to $100 donations don't make up a huge percentage over here, but they're a quarter of your donation value. And what I think that really says is that you need to appeal to a broad group of donors. You want to encourage people across the board. So when you have donations, you can set up various levels. I highly recommend setting up a lower level that is flexible and like everyone can do. So someone who's running through can say, I have an extra $5. I'll add that $5. However, you also want to have a level that asks for $500, asks for $1,000, because you never know who might be really invested in your charity and really want to do that and might actually give that. So open yourself up to all kinds of donations. This is a quick look at 3 different ways that we collect donations. One is just donations set up with levels the way that I discussed, or one option, they take donations. The middle one is donations and fundraisers. So in addition to taking donations, you have people set up to be fundraisers, to go out and try to get their friends to donate to your race as well. Sometimes with incentives, sometimes not. There's a lot of ways to set that up. The last one is a checkout page only, which is instead of having levels, having a very simple one option checkbox on the register or on the checkout page. So as someone is just about to check out, there's a little box to check that says, yes, add $5. That does well because it's simple and easy. You can't then ask for those big dollar amounts, but you do have it right in front of them at the very end. So what these numbers represent is average per race. And there's a huge, huge variation in how much races collect. Some races are 100 people, they're have a donation option and they're thrilled to collect $100 extra. Other races are targeting 10, 20, 30, $100,000. So this is a little bit spread across the board, but it is very clear that donations and fundraisers is going to get you the most money. However, fundraisers are another aspect of the race to manage. You need to have clear messages to them about why they should fundraise, where the fundraising dollars go, and you're going to want to communicate with them more frequently about how their fundraising efforts are going. If you have a really light touch event, it's probably not for you. However, if you have an engaged community where you have a lot of people who are really excited about your charity, fundraisers can be a huge, huge difference maker. A couple of quick technology points. Text notifications. These are notifications that get sent out for finishers or splits and such. Really what I wanted to highlight here is that when we have races that enable text messages, 72% of them sent fewer than 500. Generally, if they're sending them, they may not go to every participant because you have to opt into text messages, but they're going to go to a large percentage. So 72% of them are sending fewer than 500 text messages. Then their races likely aren't that large to begin with. And what that says is that technology is starting to be expected and used and demanded in small and medium events, not only in your largest events. RaceJoy runner tracking. This is a tracking app that allows you to allow spectators to track runners in their exact location on the course throughout the run. The pricing on this changed a little bit this year, so it's really targeted at events of longer distances that have a need for this type of technology. Because of that, there's actually a few less races that used it in 2018. However, the total track participants was higher. And what that tends to say is that races kind of use this as at an adoption level that is important. It matters how many people you have registering because that will tell you whether or not it's worth your time. What runner tracking can do is really create interaction with your runners, between the spectators and the runners, and make everyone a part of the race day. Most race directors don't really think about how the race day is for spectators. However, your race day experience is really filled out by having a large group of people who are having fun. If your spectators are having fun, that is going to rub off on your runners. Everyone will be having a better experience. Additionally, your spectators may come back and want to run the next year. So really finding ways to create interaction between spectators and runners can improve your event. That's pretty much it. I check really fast and see if we have any questions that have come up that I can actually see. So Brian, can a referral system start after registration has opened? You can do that. You can actually manually sort of add some people in. We tend to recommend that you do it all at once, or at least start at the start of registration, because you can end up with some confusion if you do not. Let's see. Just make sure I don't see any other questions here that can be answered. All right. I think that looks good. If you guys have any questions, if I missed something on here, then feel free to reach out. You can get me at Johanna, it's Johanna at RunSignup.com. If you want to look at the information more fully, do a little bit of reading, that's all up at RunSignup.com/trends. Thanks for joining us.